I need you to hear this before you hear anything else. Because there is a chance that, by the time you understand why I did this, everything between us could feel different. Today I stood inside a house that was supposed to be impossible. Not because the walls were too expensive, not because the location was too far away, not because the numbers on the contract scared me. It was impossible because, for the first time in my life, I bought something without thinking only about the future I was building for myself. I bought something while thinking about you. And that terrified me. You know, I have spent most of my life making decisions based on logic, data, probability, calculations. I learned how to look at uncertainty and turn it into something I could measure. But love does not work that way. Love is the one equation where the smartest person in the room can still feel completely lost. And today, standing in that empty living room, looking at the sunlight coming through the windows, I realized something that I was not prepared to admit. A house is not a home because of the walls. It becomes a home because there is someone inside it who makes you forget why you were ever afraid of being alone. And I wanted that person to be you. I walked through every room quietly, not because it was empty, because I could already hear memories that had not happened yet. I imagined you standing in the kitchen, telling me I was overthinking something simple. I imagined you opening the curtains in the morning because you always wanted more sunlight. I imagined the small things, the things nobody sees, the cup left on the table, the conversation before sleeping, the moments where we say nothing but still understand everything. And that is when the fear came, because when you finally find something you cannot imagine losing, you suddenly realize how much power it has over you. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever looked at someone and thought, if this person disappears from my life, I do not know who I become after that? That thought came to me today, and I hated it, because I have always believed I could survive anything: failure, pressure, loneliness. Starting over, I have walked through moments where people thought I would not recover. But losing you? That thought felt different, because you are not just someone I want beside me. You are someone who changed the way I see tomorrow. Before you, I thought success was about reaching the highest point. Now I wonder if success means having someone who is waiting for you when you finally get there. I know this sounds strange, coming from someone who spends years creating things that are supposed to change the world. But the older I become, the more I understand something. The biggest achievements are not the things people applaud. They are the quiet moments nobody knows about. The person who holds your hand when nobody is watching. The person who sees your fears before you explain them. The person who does not fall in love with your achievements, but stays because they know your heart. And that is why this house scared me. Because buying it was easy, compared to admitting what it really meant. It meant I was no longer planning a future where I was alone. It meant I was finally allowing myself to need someone. And needing someone is the most dangerous feeling in the world. Because when you need someone, you give them the ability to hurt you. You give them access to the parts of yourself you spent years protecting. The world sees confidence. The world sees decisions. The world sees someone who can take risks. But they do not see the person who sits alone at night, wondering if he is capable of being loved without having to prove his worth. They do not see the fear behind the ambition. They do not see the hesitation before the commitment. And they definitely do not see the moment when someone like me stands in an empty house and whispers your name because he wants to know if he made the right choice. Did I? Did I choose the right dream? Did I choose the right person? Or am I creating a beautiful future for someone who may never want to live inside it with me? That question stayed with me today because a house can be purchased. A future cannot be forced. A person cannot be convinced to feel what their heart does not feel. And that is the part nobody tells you about love. The hardest moment is not finding someone. The hardest moment is standing there after you find them and realizing you still have no guarantee they will stay. I know what it feels like to build things where failure is acceptable. You try, you learn, you improve, you try again, but love is different. There are no backup versions of a person. There is no replacement for a connection that feels rare. There is no machine that can recreate the feeling of one specific person walking into your life and changing everything. So today, when I signed those papers, was not just buying a house, I was making a promise. A promise that scared me because I knew I could not control the outcome. I was saying, I am ready, but a small voice inside me asked, are you sure she is ready too? And maybe that is the most painful question a person can ask. Not do I love her? I know the answer to that. The painful question is, will she choose me when there is nothing left to prove? Will she choose the quiet mornings? Will she choose the ordinary days? Will she choose the version of me that exists when when the world is not watching. Because anyone can love the exciting moments, anyone can love the success, anyone can love the vision. But who stays when there is silence? Who stays when there are fears? Who stays when two people have to face each other without distractions? That is the kind of love I want, not a perfect love, a real one, the kind where two people admit they are scared, but still move closer. The kind where both people know they could get hurt, but they decide the possibility of something beautiful is worth the risk. And maybe that is why I kept this house a secret. Not because I wanted to surprise you, not because I wanted a dramatic moment, but because I needed time to understand my own heart first. I needed to know if I was buying a house because I was certain about us, or because I was afraid of losing the idea of us. There is a difference, and I have spent nights thinking about that difference. Because sometimes we do not chase people because they are right for us. Sometimes we chase them because we are afraid of what life feels like without them. And I never wanted that kind of love with you. I never wanted you to feel like a missing piece I needed to complete myself. I wanted you to be someone I chose even when I was already whole, someone I could stand beside, not someone I had to hold on to out of fear. That is the kind of love that lasts, the kind that says, I do not need you to save me. I want to build with you. And standing inside that house today, I realized there was something I had not told you, something deeper than the house, something deeper than the surprise. I haven't told you the real reason yet, because the truth is not about the keys, it is not about the rooms, it is not even about the future I imagined inside those walls. The truth is about a fear I have carried for a long time. A fear that maybe the person I love most deserves a life more peaceful than the one I know how to create. Maybe you deserve someone who can simply sit beside you and enjoy a quiet evening without constantly fighting tomorrow. Maybe you deserve someone who does not always carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, and that thought broke something inside me. Because for the first time, I questioned whether loving you meant bringing you closer or letting you go. I stood there in that empty house, asking myself a question I never wanted to ask. If loving you means risking everything, am I brave enough? And if protecting you means walking away, would I be strong enough to do it? I never expected buying a dream house would force me to face the possibility of losing the person I bought it for. But maybe that is what real love does. It removes every illusion. It forces you to stop pretending you are fearless. It makes you stand completely exposed in front of another human being and say, this is me, this is everything I have, this is everything I am afraid of losing. So before you ever see that house, before you ever walk through those doors, AB needs you to know the truth about the person who bought it. I am not someone who has all the answers. I am not someone who never doubts. I am not someone who knows exactly how our story ends. I am someone who found a person worth taking a risk for. And that person is you. But there is still one thing I discovered inside those walls today. Something that almost made me question everything I thought I knew about us. Something I was not prepared to face. And I do not know if you will understand why I kept it hidden. I remember standing there with the keys in my hand, feeling something I never expected to feel. After achieving something I once dreamed about, I felt afraid. Not afraid of the house, not afraid of the responsibility, not afraid of the decision itself. I was afraid of what this house represented, because once you create a place for someone, once you imagine their laughter inside those walls, once you picture their footsteps moving through those rooms, you are no longer just building a structure. You are building a place where your heart can either finally rest or completely break. And that is the part I could not escape. I kept walking through the rooms, trying to convince myself that I was happy. I told myself, this is a beautiful moment. Enjoy it. But my mind kept returning to one question. What if she never comes? What if the person I imagined sharing this life with decides that this life is not the one she wants? Have you ever prepared something beautiful for someone, only to suddenly wonder if they would even want it? Have you ever held a dream in your hands and realized that dreams are fragile because they require another person's heart to match yours? That is what I felt today. A strange combination of happiness and fear, like standing at the edge of a mountain after climbing for years, only to realize the person you wanted to share the view with might not be standing beside you. And I hated that feeling, because I am used to solving problems. If something breaks, I fix it. If something fails, I rebuild it. If something seems impossible, I search for a way. But there are some things you cannot engineer. You cannot design someone's feelings. You cannot create love through effort alone. You cannot build a future with someone who is still unsure if they want to walk toward you. And that truth has been haunting me, because when I bought this house, everyone would assume it was an act of confidence. They would think I had everything figured out. They would think I knew exactly what I was doing. But the reality was completely different. The biggest decisions in life are not made when you feel certain. They are made when you feel terrified and still choose to move forward. And that is what I did. I moved forward while carrying a fear I never admitted, a fear that maybe I was preparing a place for a woman who might never understand how deeply she was loved. I have met many people in my life. People who were attracted to success, people who admired achievements, people who loved the image of someone who could create impossible things. But you, Abby, never wanted you to love an image. I wanted you to know the person behind it, the person who gets tired, the person who questions himself, the person who sometimes sits alone and wonders if he is enough. Because the truth is, the strongest looking people often carry the heaviest doubts. And there were moments when I looked at that house and thought, maybe I am trying to give you everything, because I am afraid you will realize I am not everything. Maybe I am trying to build something permanent, because somewhere deep inside, I am afraid people leave. That was the hidden battle happening inside me. Not whether I could buy a house. I could. The battle was whether I could allow myself to believe someone would stay after seeing all of me, not the achievements, not the ideas, not the version of me people admire. The real me, the person who has fears, the person who has regrets, the person who has made mistakes, the person who still wonders if he deserves a love that feels this rare. And maybe you understand that feeling. Maybe you have also looked at someone you love and thought, what if I give them my heart and they do not know what to do with it? What if I trust them and they change? What if I build a future and they decide they want a different one? Those questions are painful because they do not have simple answers. Love requires something almost unreasonable. It requires hope without guarantees. It requires trust without control. It requires opening the door even though you know someone could walk away. And today, I opened that door. But before I opened it for you, I had to confront something about myself. Something I did not want to admit. I was not only afraid of losing you. I was afraid of losing the version of myself that existed because of you. Because before you, I was always moving, always chasing, always building, always thinking about what was next. But you made me slow down. You made me notice the small things. You made me understand that maybe life is not only about reaching the destination. Maybe life is about having someone beside you when you finally arrive. And that scared me because I had spent years becoming independent. And then you appeared. And suddenly independence was no longer the only thing I wanted. I wanted connection. I wanted a person who knew my silence. I wanted someone who could look at me and understand what I could not say. But wanting something deeply also creates vulnerability. And vulnerability is dangerous, because when you care about something, you create the possibility of pain. That is the price of love. And I was willing to pay it. But then something happened. Something that changed the way I looked at this entire decision. Something I did not expect. I received a message that made me stop. A message that made me question whether I had misunderstood everything. For a moment, I wondered if I had been building this dream alone. I wondered if I had created a future in my mind that only existed there. And that thought almost destroyed the excitement of the day, because there is a special kind of loneliness that comes from feeling alone inside a dream meant for two people. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever been surrounded by something beautiful but still felt empty because the one person you wanted there was missing? That was me, standing in the house, holding the keys, feeling like I had everything, ran nothing. And for the first time, I asked myself a question I was afraid to answer. What if I am choosing the wrong woman? What if the person I thought understood my heart never truly saw it? What if I was in love with the possibility of us more than the reality of us? That question hurt because I had always trusted my instincts. I trusted my ability to see patterns. I trusted my ability to predict outcomes. But love had made me uncertain. And uncertainty is difficult for someone who has spent his entire life searching for answers. I sat down on the floor of that empty room. Yes, the same room where I imagined your future. And I just sat there, no plans, no solutions, no strategies, just a person trying to understand his own heart. And I thought about every moment between us. Every conversation, every laugh, every time you made me feel understood, every time you looked at me like I was not a person who had to prove something. I thought about the way you made ordinary moments feel important. And slowly, I realized something. Maybe the house was never the proof of my love. Maybe the proof was the fact that I was willing to face this fear. The fear that I could lose something precious. The fear that I could be wrong. The fear that my heart could break. Because love without risk is not really love. It is just comfort. And I never wanted comfort with you. I wanted something real, something that could survive difficult conversations, something that could survive uncertainty, something that could survive the moments when two people are forced to ask, are we choosing each other because it is easy? Or are we choosing each other because we truly cannot imagine life apart? But there was still something I had not told you. The reason I kept this house hidden was not just because I wanted to surprise you. There was another reason, a deeper reason, a reason connected to something I discovered before I signed those papers, something that changed my entire understanding of what this future really meant. I haven't told you the real reason yet, because if I tell you too soon, you might misunderstand my heart. You might think this was about the house. You might think this was about money. You might think this was about creating some perfect fantasy. But it was never about that. It was about a promise I made to myself after realizing something painful. A promise that almost made me walk away from everything. Because there was a moment when I thought, maybe the most loving thing I can do is not give you this house. Maybe the most loving thing I can do is disappear before you ever have the chance to tell me you never wanted it. And that thought brought me closer to losing you than I ever want to admit, because for the first time in years, AB almost chose fear over love. I almost convinced myself that walking away would hurt less than waiting to find out the truth. But then I remembered something about you. Something small, something nobody else would notice, and that one memory changed everything, because it made me realize that maybe I was not the only person carrying fear. Maybe you had your own fears. Maybe you had your own reasons for holding back. Maybe you were not running away from me. Maybe you were protecting yourself from being hurt. And suddenly, the question changed. It was no longer, will she choose me? The question became, will I be brave enough to let her choose freely? Because real love cannot be demanded. It cannot be trapped inside a beautiful house. It cannot be secured with promises. It has to be chosen every day by two people. And before I reveal what happened next, before I tell you what I discovered that almost made me cancel everything, you need to understand one thing. That day, inside that empty house, I was not fighting against losing a property. I was fighting against losing the only person who made me want a home in the first place. And the next decision I had to make was the hardest decision I have ever faced. I need you to know what happened in that moment. Because that was the moment when I realized the house was never the biggest decision I had to make. The biggest decision was whether I was going to love you with an open heart, or whether I was going to protect myself by keeping a distance. And for someone like me, that was harder than any business decision, any risk, any challenge I had ever faced. Because in every other area of life, you are rewarded for protecting yourself. You analyze, you prepare, you create backup plans, you remove uncertainty. But love asks you to do something completely different. Love asks you to stand in the middle of uncertainty and say, I am still here, even when you do not know the ending, even when you cannot predict the outcome, even when your heart is telling you that this person has the ability to hurt you more than anyone else ever could. That was the battle I was facing, and the truth is, AB almost lost that battle. I almost walked away from the dream house, not because I stopped loving you, because I loved you so much that the possibility of losing you became unbearable. There is a strange thing about caring deeply for someone. Sometimes, the more you love them, the more reasons your mind creates to run away. Your heart says, move closer. Your fear says, protect yourself. Your heart says, trust her. Your fear says, remember what happened before. And somewhere between those two voices, you find yourself standing still. That was me. Standing in a house designed for two people, feeling like I was carrying the entire future alone. And then I remembered something. I remembered the way you looked at me during one of our quietest moments, not during a big achievement, not during a moment when everyone else was impressed. It was just a normal moment, a moment where I was tired, a moment where I was not trying to be extraordinary. And you looked at me like I was enough. Do you know how rare that is? To find someone who does not need you to perform? Someone who does not need the successful version of you? Someone who does not need the perfect version of you? Someone who can look at your uncertainty and still see your worth? That memory stopped me, because I realized I had been measuring love the wrong way. I was looking for proof that you would never leave. But maybe real love is not about finding someone who can guarantee they will stay forever. Maybe real love is finding someone who chooses to stay today, and then chooses again tomorrow, and again the day after that. Not because they have to, because they want to. That is the kind of love I wanted with you. Not a promise made because of a house, not a commitment made because of comfort, not a relationship held together because leaving would be difficult. I wanted a love where we both looked at each other and said, I know this will not always be easy, but I still choose you. And that was the hidden truth I had been afraid to face. The house was never my way of proving I loved you. It was my way of admitting that I was finally ready to be vulnerable. For years, I thought strength meant needing nobody. I thought being powerful meant standing alone. I thought independence meant never allowing someone else to have the ability to affect your happiness, but you changed that belief. You showed me that there is another kind of strength. The strength to trust, the strength to care, the strength to say, this person matters to me, and I am not ashamed of that. And maybe that is the hardest thing for someone who has spent their life building walls, not creating the walls, removing them because walls protect you, but they also keep people out. And I did not want to build another wall between us. I wanted to open the door, even if my hands were shaking, even if I was afraid, even if I did not know what would happen next, because there was something I finally understood. A house is not a promise that someone will stay. It is an invitation that says, I created a place where we can grow. I created a place where we can make mistakes. I created a place where we can come back to each other after difficult days. I created a place where love does not have to be perfect to be real. And that is what I wanted to give you. Not luxury, not perfection, not a picture that looks beautiful from the outside. I wanted to give you a place where we could be completely ourselves. A place where your fears would have space. A place where my fears would have space. A place where we would not have to pretend. But there was still one thing I needed to tell you. The reason I bought this house was not because I was certain you would say yes. It was because I finally understood something about love. The most meaningful choices are not made after the fear disappears. They are made while the fear is still there. And I was afraid. I was afraid that maybe I was too late. Maybe life had changed us. Maybe we had both become different people. Maybe the timing was wrong. Maybe the dream I was building belonged to another version of us that no longer existed. Those thoughts hurt, because sometimes the hardest thing about love is not falling in love. It is accepting that two people can love each other and still face obstacles, still have doubts, still have wounds, still have moments where they wonder if they are making the right choice. But I learned something. Love is not proven when everything is easy. Love is revealed when two people have every reason to be afraid, and still choose honesty. So I decided I was going to tell you everything, not the version that sounded perfect, not the version that made me look fearless, the real version. The version where I admit that I bought this house because I wanted a future with you, and I was terrified that I might be building a future you did not want. The version where I admit that sometimes I wondered if I loved you more than you loved me. The version where I questioned if I was holding on to a dream or holding on to you, and that was painful to admit because nobody wants to feel like they are the only person fighting for something. Nobody wants to feel like they are standing at the door waiting for someone who may never knock. But then I realized something else. Maybe you were waiting too. Maybe you were afraid too. Maybe you were asking yourself the same questions. Can I trust this? Can I believe this is real? Can I allow myself to be loved without expecting it to disappear? And suddenly, I stopped seeing you as someone who might leave. I started seeing you as someone who might also be carrying invisible fears. And that changed everything. Because love is not one person convincing another person to stay. Love is two people admitting they are scared, and deciding they do not want fear to make their choices. So I picked up the keys again. I walked through every room one more time, and this time, I was not imagining a perfect future. I was imagining a real one. The arguments, the apologies, the laughter after misunderstandings, the quiet mornings, the difficult conversations, the moments where we would have to choose patience instead of pride, because that is what a real home is, not a place without problems, a place where problems do not destroy love. And before I left that house, I stood in the room I imagined would be yours. And I said something quietly, something I wish you could have heard. I said, I do not need you to come here because I bought this place. I want you to come here because your heart feels safe here. I do not want you to choose this house. I want you to choose us. Because if you choose the house but not the love inside it, then these walls mean nothing. But if you choose us, then even the smallest place in the world would feel like everything. And that was the final truth I had been searching for. I thought I was building a home for you. But you were the reason I wanted one. You were the reason I stopped chasing endless achievements and started thinking about moments. You were the reason I started asking different questions. Not what can I build, but who do I want beside me when everything I build becomes quiet? And the answer was always you, not because you completed me, because you reminded me that life was never meant to be measured only by what we create. It is also measured by who we love, who we forgive, who we protect, who we choose when nobody is watching. So when you finally walk through those doors, I do not want you to see a house. I want you to see every fear I overcame to create that moment, every doubt I carried, every night I wondered if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Every moment I almost chose safety over love, because loving you was never the easy decision, it was the brave one. And if there is one thing I hope you understand, is this. I did not buy this dream house because I was certain we would never face storms. I bought it because I believe we are worth finding our way back after every storm. I believe some people enter your life and make you realize that protecting your heart forever is not the same as truly living. And you did that for me. You made me willing to risk. You made me willing to hope. You made me willing to open a door I had kept locked for years. So, come see it, not because it is beautiful, not because it is expensive, not because it is a symbol of success. Come see it, because every empty room is waiting for a story. Every corner is waiting for a memory. Every morning is waiting for a reason to begin. And the reason I wanted this place was never the house itself. It was the possibility that someday, after everything we have been through, after every fear, after every doubt, after every moment where we almost gave up, we could stand together inside these walls and realize something, that we did not find a perfect love. We found a real one. A love that survived uncertainty, a love that survived fear, a love that survived the moments where walking away would have been easier. And maybe that is the greatest thing two people can ever create. Not a building, not a possession, not something the world can measure, but a place in each other's hearts where they finally feel at home.